Welcome everybody to RadPod and Chill. This is Radicalized Truth Survives weekly live stream recap of our most recent episode. And usually we don't actually recap very much the most recent episodes, but this time we are going to. I almost feel like we should just kick it off with Keir's video clip. What do you think, Hi-Fi?
I can do that. You ready?
Let's do it.
The pattern, unfortunately, that seems to underlie a lot of the most enthusiastic Russian propagandists is that they have been dealing with severely damaged personalities and personal failure for most of their lives. In fact, the overlap between the number of Russian propagandists who also turn out to be convicted sex offenders is absolutely startling. There are some deep-seated fundamental personality flaws that actually predispose people to being available to be made use of by Russia. And if you look back at the KGB handbooks for recruiting agents of influence, agents of subversion, or indeed propagandists, then you can see very clearly that Russia understood the misfits make the good targets, the people with a grudge, the people who feel they've been treated unfairly by the world because they've been consistent failures, and therefore seek revenge. And you can see that revenge coming through so strongly in some of the verbal attacks that you hear from the trolls, from the so-called independent journalists, the ones pushing the Russian propaganda lines, because the bile and the vitriol and the hatred that they pour out when they're talking about people who criticize Russia, it's extremely personal, and it's plainly tapping deeply into their own personality defects.
Well, there you go, kids.
Let's
just run that clip over and over and over.
Yeah, I was going to say, can we please run it again at the end? It would make me so happy to hear it again in case anybody misses the top. Boy, oh boy, that clip has been seen by a lot of people, and what's interesting is nobody who has proven themselves to be Russian propagandists want to come near it, because it's almost like an admission. There's been a few little dainty approaches, but wow, Keir. So for those of you who did not see episode 55 yet of Radicalized, that was Keir Giles. He has a new book out called Russia's War on Everybody. He wrote the Handbook of Russian Information Warfare, which was for NATO, but of course it's been read by many people, and myself included. And he also, that was a follow-up to his book, Moscow Rules. But wow.
I mean, Keir cuts right to the fucking chase. He, as he says in the interview, is not an academic. Incredibly smart and incredibly clear writer. And I think the fact that he doesn't come from academia actually serves him really well. Hi-Fi, are you on fire? Are you actually like...
Yes.
I'm concerned right now because
I'm always on fire, baby.
A huge plume of and you're going like this, so I'm not okay. Anyway,
that boy,
I got some ashes on my Mipso sweatshirt. Mipso.
I hate when that happens.
Yes.
That doesn't happen to me. I don't get
Mipso's awesome. Everyone should
This is what happens when boomers smoke too much weed, man. It's bad.
He's the young one in the group. Well,
I know, right?
I didn't say I'm not a boomer. I just said he was.
I'm Gen X.
I think it's funny that he's
Gen X.
technically not.
He smacks his microphone out of the way.
This is going great. This is going good.
Nothing but professionalism over here, my friend.
Of course, Keir. Oh, I do have to apologize to my beautiful Substack community. I unfortunately can't read my own headlines for some reason. So there will be like errant apostrophes and some homonyms that are sometimes incorrect. But for the last 24 hours, I had a headline that said, everybody, everybody. There was no why. And thousands of people read this story and nobody said, hey, you got a typo in your headline. And finally today I was looking at it. I was like, why does that say everybody?
Why do you don't have any problem finding my fucking typos.
I know.
That's because yours are blatant, dude.
No.
That's why I don't write, so nobody can point out my typos. I win.
You know what's beautiful about this war, and one of the things about that gnarly platform, Twitter, being one of the playing, or I guess warring fields, battlefields, is that it's about content and not spelling. But I must say that thanks to Morgan Fairchild, excuse me. I just saw a really cool clip of Morgan Freeman when he was a young man, and it was really hilarious, on Electric Company or something. But no, Morgan Fairchild, the actress, she corrects my typos. She corrects my homonyms. So now I've become a much more adroit copy editor of homonyms. But that does not mean I don't have some sort of block on my headlines, everybody.
Morgan Fairchild retweets me on, or retweets me, or whatever it is, on Mastodon, because she's on there.
Yeah.
And every time it happens, I feel like that not Star Trek, Saturday Night Live skit where it's like, when Morgan Fairchild retweeted me.
Hey,
you know what?
Somebody I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question. Actually, I have two questions. Is Morgan Fairchild single, and does she like younger men?
The answer to that, I believe, is no. She sometimes shows pictures of herself with a very fine gentleman who appears to be age appropriate. But I want to say about her is somebody asked.
You're really going for that boomer thing, aren't you?
Somebody asked the Twitter sphere at one point, who is the kindest person on Twitter? And aside from Hi-Fi, who's no longer there, LOL, I just with hands down said Morgan Fairchild. She's just so kind. And now I will say Harry Dunn is giving her a run for her money, because
I'm the kindest person on Twitter.
It was surely I jest.
All right, this show
I'm
is
not jesting, and
show is turning
into
some kind of happy nice.
Okay, let's get to the gnarly stuff.
Let's get to the
Hey, wait. I got something to say. Jim's back.
Damn it.
No, Hi-Fi is not looking for anything, chat. Stop it.
Jim's back on Twitter. Jim's back on Twitter.
Jim's back on Twitter.
Jim's back on Twitter. I try to get to a neutral place and not get too emo about it, but I got to say it was quite a moment for me. I just sat in the rain for a while.
Really weird. I was just like doing my normal shit, and then all of a sudden I got this weird blue notification. I was like, that's weird. I never saw a Mastodon notification look like that. Just, okay, whatever.
I do think it's interesting.
He gave a whole bunch of Nazis and the worst traitor in American history their account back before me. So,
So Hi-Fi has a chance.
No, I would just like to point out for the audience that apparently I am the same ranking as Eldon Wood, because he is also still suspended. So
because he what?
I don't know what that means. Eldon, my original Twitter account and Eldon Wood are both still suspended.
I was trying to wonder.
Well, so is Sidney Powell.
That must have been a Nazi oversight.
Are you telling me I rate leopard stretch pants? Is that what you're telling me?
Stop. Okay, we're gonna get back to some serious stuff.
Disturbed pants fit, I guess.
So since we last checked in with you guys, there was an insurrection in Brazil. I'm trying to take us back to the.
Oh yeah, there was an insurrection in Brazil.
Yeah, there was a copycat insurrection.
There sure was.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple big differences, right? One, there was nobody home at the time.
Yeah.
So that was different.
Yeah.
Right? In our case, there were lots of people there that were being named to be murdered. This was, property crime, basically, at this point, not to minimize it, because what it was, like here, was a fucking rehearsal for the real thing. And they got the National Congress, they got the Federal Supreme Court, and they got the Presidential Palace.
crazy. Did we just bounce?
What just happened?
I don't know. We're getting DDoS, bro. No, I'm just kidding.
Probably. I don't know. Where'd Heidi go?
Heidi bounced. She like left completely. Heidi,
Oh,
come
well.
back. There she is.
We just had some sort of Russian intervention.
It's the hacksaws, bro.
So I want you to repeat what you said, because there was a couple of points that I wanted to make. So can you repeat what I missed on the second and third differences? Nobody home.
Nobody home.
No, I have no idea.
They took multiple.
I'm not as high as Hi-Fi, but I'm not. I'm not straight enough to remember what happened before the massive, breach by the Russian authorities.
Well, it is Russia's war on everybody. And before, wait a second, I'm going to make Keir points throughout this entire episode or entire hour. But it is very important to know, if you are somebody who does not believe that there is Russian warfare being waged on you, I would like to point out one story in Keir's book about ransomware, how that affects cyber insurance, and that affects tax dollars. So you all are being impacted by Russian information warfare and cyber terrorism, whether you like it or not. So it's not just the people who are on the front lines. It's also the fact that ransomware, those types of attacks actually end up filling the coffers of criminal gangs that work right out of the head of the digital headquarters in Moscow. So it's very important that people are aware of that. That was one point that he brought up that I thought was very critical.
Yeah, can I bitch about something for a second?
Please.
Because I'm good at that. The Washington Post did a story that made like this huge splash about how the Russian bots didn't change people's opinions in 2016.
Yeah, right.
I swear to God, these fucking idiots. It's been 7 years, guys.
Yeah.
How can you not have figured this out? It was not bots. There was a few like IRA people doing. Hold on. It wasn't fucking bots. It was Mike Flynn and Donald Trump and fucking Eric Prince and Peter Thiel and a whole shitload of white nationalist terrorists who are all on the side of Putin. It doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist to figure out that the Russian influence did not come through some magical botnet that, Louise Mensch made up. It came from fucking human beings who are influenced by the goddamn Russians.
I dare say.
That's how it works. And it upsets me because the Post put this headline that's just a big softball for all the tankies and dipshits out there who want to deny that Russia has anything to do with anything. It's very annoying. I wish these goddamn newspapers who claim to be journalists would do the tiniest little bit of homework, any homework at all, to understand what they're actually writing about.
I love tankies and dipshits. I love tankies and dipshits. Well, first of all, I did the math on how much it cost to have reporters following George Santos, or the guy calling himself George Santos, around. It was somewhere about $1.6 million worth of salaries, not including benefits, just following down the hallway. And why that matters is because it was very clear to me from the very beginning, when he first made his appearance on the little screen, just like Marjorie Taylor Greene 2 years ago, that this was theater craft. This was going to be another one of these, chaos agents. And so, good for you, media, that you have the money to, follow this shit around. Well, a second insurrection is occurring in Congress, as Jim pointed out, that is much more serious and has much greater ramifications than likely the first one. Before I stop with my TED Talk, I just want to say reports have been, newspapers have been reporting on, academic studies saying kind of the same thing that you just said, Jim. And I'd like to go back to 2014 when the FBI warned us that Russian infiltration in academia and Silicon Valley was a national security threat. I believe that threat is ongoing. So there you go.
I mean,
Yeah, but also in terms of the, like, Keir was talking about the people who are compromised, right? Who are most easily compromised. Who is that? Incels, like the exact same people who started the alt right and Gamergate and all that shit, right?
Yeah.
Those are the vulnerable people that Keir is talking about, right?
Yeah. Right.
That's why they were so easily radicalized, right?
Yeah.
Because of that fucking grievance. Now, whether or not they're getting rubles in their Bitcoin account or not, it doesn't actually matter. What matters
Right.
is, what is it that they're saying? What are they doing? And how are they influencing others? And they get
Right.
weaponized and turned into these little fucking information suicide bombers and run around
Right.
infecting people with their bullshit.
I
It's not bots and it's not any of that stuff. It's
so
human beings.
right. Right. I do want to say that what the operation, the IRA did very effectively, as you know, was radicalize people further to those extremes. So we all hate each other. I saw that happen in real time. I saw some people in 2016 who used to be somewhat middle of the road and whatever their beliefs were, go into their corners and just venomous, battle each other with venom because of so many of the emboldening Hillary memes that they were being fed on Facebook. But I want to say, to that point, another incredible quote from Keir that I'm going to try to quote verbatim. In the United States, it's that deeply embedded view that the constitutional amendments safeguarding freedom of speech mean that you can allow a hostile power to exploit it in order to damage your society. That is the biggest problem the United States is facing. What are we doing? What are we doing? The countries that are attacking us do not have these freedoms. What are we doing?
We're standing around with our thumbs up our ass because the billionaires who run this country are going to allow us to sink into fascism.
Well, what did Paul Mason say? He said the First Amendment gives you the right to plan a genocide, and the Second Amendment gives you the right to execute it.
Yeah. What are we doing?
That's what they think it means. That's what they think those amendments mean. And when you allow the words to be so slowly twisted and tormented into a ridiculous, perverted version of what any human being could possibly read into the words, you end up where you are. And that's why propaganda and disinformation is so important, right?
Yeah.
Because you repeat it over and over and over again, and you get a phrase like pro-life into the vernacular, and suddenly it's both sides, right? When in fact it's fucking women's health. It has nothing to do with your religious bullshit, but because they were able to get that phrase wrapped in, it helped the entire movement, take away women's rights.
Yeah.
Well, it's
last year, which we seem to forget kind of all the fucking time, which, anyway.
High five.
It's the normalization of the messaging, right?
Yeah.
It's and it's delivered from the pulpit. It's delivered from literal preachers. It's delivered from community leaders, church leaders. It is
and the cult leaders, as Ruth always points out. You cannot continue to grow your cult and the cult of personality without continually feeding your base, and why the rallies are so important. But another thing,
the problem is that there's no difference between religious leaders and cult leaders anymore, right? Like, for example, let's just briefly, Greg Locke, right? This motherfucker down in Tennessee who has a whole COVID warehouse full of brainwashed, like, QAnon people. Like, used to be a preacher, but now is literally a QAnon dude who goes on Mike Flynn's QAnon tour. And on the Vice documentary, they asked him, they said, do you believe in this QAnon stuff? And he's like, no. And they were like, well, do you believe that there's human trafficking where satanic pedophiles eat babies in basements? And he was like, oh, totally, of course. He's like, well, that's QAnon. Well, I know, but I'm not supposed to say that. And then they said, well, so why do you believe it? Well, there's some very prominent people who are involved in Q, and they're like, oh, really? And he was like, yeah, Mike Flynn.
Yeah.
The reason I tell that story is not just to bust on Mike Flynn, even though I love that. It's that there are these syncretic movements, right? The fascist movement, the Russian movement, and the theocratic movement have all come together into the same virulent,
Very important. So what I wanted to say was Keir reminded us that among the various active measures being run on everybody in the West by Russia, the cyber, obviously, all of the chaos, the shock events, was also a long game on chipping away at our public health narrative. And so what's interesting to me, for me, it was important to be reminded of the fact that it predated the anti-vax propaganda, predated COVID. Yes, we can go back as far as the AIDS propaganda, but I think it's just important to know even more recently that there was a lot of Russian-funded disinformation around vaccinations that were already in place prior to the COVID outbreak, which made it just seamless when people started to buy into the disinformation around the science.
Yeah, I mean, Robert F. Kennedy has been trading off his dad's name like a piece of shit for a couple of decades. Lee Dundas, who is the psychotic Scientology lawyer who's screaming to run into the Capitol or whatever it was on 1/6, and goes on Mike Flynn's QAnon tours and yells at people. It's all of this shit. Sorry, I got caught up on Lee Dundas because.
Well, to your point, we just found out that Lisa Marie Presley died, and I'm very sorry for her family. I'm so sorry, so young, so sad. I heard it was cardiac arrest. Haven't confirmed that, but I already know when we were talking about this earlier, Jim, that this will then be weaponized in the disinformation channels and the conspiracy theory channels, because you can't have fascism. You can't have fascism without conspiracy theories. And one thing I want to remind everybody that I was writing about today and thinking about today was that fog of unknowability when conspiracy theories are just at play all the time, which we know from Jason Stanley is part of the unreality that becomes necessary when fascism is on the march. It's just people don't believe in anything. So I think it's just really important that we continually point out that, this is part of active measures to tear us apart from the inside. And, there is armor. We have an easy fix. According to Keir Giles, the easy fix is the leader stands up and says, we are under attack from Russia. This is what it looks like. And then we can start collectively getting people out of the denial and moving us toward a shared narrative again. It's not unfixable is the main point.
Yeah.
Hold on. I need to go.
You faked me out, man. I was waiting for you, and then you.
All right. I'm sorry. I put my hand up too much. I need to talk about this. We talked about this on episode 55.
Mm-hmm.
Cambridge Analytica.
Mm-hmm. Steve Bannon,
Robert Mercer, Steve Bannon, right?
St. Petersburg, yeah.
Dr.
We know that Meta Facebook was Peter Thiel, Mark Zuckerberg. We know that Palantir, Peter Thiel, aided Cambridge Analytica in scraping data.
Mm-hmm.
We know that data was used, at least in one case, to target voters, right? To disenfranchise Black voters. Mm-hmm. We know that for a fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would also put out there that people then had these oceans profiles built against them based on their massive. I mean, think about it. If you've got the Coke i360 combined with what, Cambridge Analytica had off of Facebook,
Yeah.
combined with Twitter data, combined with whatever, you build these profiles on people.
Yep.
You know their proclivities.
Yeah,
You know
let's
their
go back to
vulnerabilities.
my happy place of having a leader actually take the bull by the horn and tell people that we're under
Yeah,
attack.
Joe Biden, if you're listening, fucking get on it, bro.
Please.
Look, here's the thing. The important part about that story is the number. $725 million is nothing. It's literally like from midnight to 8 a.m. one day. Like that's what we're talking about in terms of what their corporate valuation is, right? Like maybe not anymore because they've lost a shitload in the last little while, but they were $1 trillion company at one point. That's less than 0.1%, right? It's a zero. It's rounding error, and Facebook got to be $1 trillion company. Why? Because Peter Thiel and the rest of these guys like created these algorithms and gave them the data set that they needed, and then Facebook returned the favor, right? It's the problem with the fines that are given out and the fact that people aren't put in fucking prison is that these things become extremely cheap crimes. It's just a crime. It's a crime that you can pay for with a very small percentage of your revenue, because you can count on being able to bring your lawyers in to say, oh, it's a big fine, $700 million. And in the meantime, you've got a whole shitload of billionaires who are even more billionaire than they were.
And even worse than the billionaires becoming more billionaire is the amount of collateral damage and family members that everybody loses to all of this psycho disinformation, which unfortunately we learned also from Keir doesn't always have to have a point or a rhyme or reason. Sometimes it's just to create some chaos. It doesn't even have to, it's just disruption and destabilization.
The word I would like to put in here is trauma, right? So you traumatize people, both individual people, but also the population, right? Like what is the biggest effect that Donald Trump's presidency had on anybody who has a shred of empathy? You felt traumatized, like you've been beaten for 4 years, because you have been. You were beaten by psychological terrorists who were doing everything in their power to make you feel powerless, right? Because they want to be Big Daddy who comes in to save you. Hence, strongman, had to Ruth Ben-Ghiat, right? That's the whole point of these operations that are there just to hurt people. They want people with dead relatives. They want people, not being afraid to go outside. They want all of this stuff because it benefits them, because it's tearing us down. And it's why enemies of democracy like Mike Flynn are anti-vax. That motherfucker is vaxxed all the way up and down in every possible way. I guarantee it. He wants people dead because he wants the end of not just American democracy, the whole idea.
Well, I will say, I gotta say on that point, I find it very traumatizing to listen to these propagandists. And as I was listening to a clip that you played earlier of Steve Bannon, I realized that their form of propaganda, and I would say the same for disgraced Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, is so casual. Just this casual propaganda. It's casual propaganda among friends. It could almost sound normal. It almost sounds like it's not thought out or scripted or anything. Just casual conversation among friends filled with Russian propaganda. All of it straight up benefiting not liberal democracy, but benefiting fascist ideology. And that is what I think is so chilling about it.
Yeah, I think the thing that was most interesting to me with Flynn was actually something I was listening to this afternoon. Is him in a Twitter space, because what he was doing for an hour before, I had to leave, but then my partner Gal mentioned, he was um, uh, LARPing as a normal guy, right? LARPing as and sorry if you know what LARPing means, live action role play. LARPing as some kind of upstanding ex-general who just happens to be conservative and likes himself some Donald Trump. Not mentioning the decade of blatant psychological warfare that and other kind of warfare he's been engaging in on the United States. And to your point, Heidi, he sounds like, he knows how to play that part.
Very
and when
well.
you hear him do that, it makes the times when he's delivering his propaganda, it makes it even worse, right? Because it's all just, it's facets of a shifting mirage of information there to distract in any possible way from the fundamental truth, which is that for 10 fucking years he has been waging war against his own country.
And I think that clip that we are going to end on again with Keir Giles, thank you for flashing all of these important documentaries on screen, Hi-Fi. That clip that we're going to end on again, which talks about the misfits and those who feel like they're a failure, people who were fired publicly, people who were exposed publicly as liars, as taking money from foreign enemies. All of that. I'm going to be writing about the worst spy in American history tonight. I just learned about him from Keir. And every story leads to a story. That's what's so rich about what we do, is just that knowledge that we're able to relay, and the fact that there's historic precedences for these disgruntled people. So it's not so unusual. At first, it seems so crazy. How could somebody who was serving this country be a traitor? Well, not the first one, won't be the last. So
Robert Hansen, Opus Dei, just saying.
So anyway, I think it's important that we realize that somebody like that actually fits the profile that Keir laid out so perfectly.
I mean, what Hi-Fi said, Robert, I don't know if that's who you're talking about in terms of the worst spy, but that guy did a shitload of damage for sure. And yes, he was both a Russian spy and Opus Dei. Those two things are not separable. And by the way, neither is Russian influence and Nazism, which go hand in glove as well. The Russians have been stoking the neo-Nazi movement here and everywhere for a really long time. But it really got started with the most recent version with Iron March in 2011, which is a website that founded 11 or 12 serious neo-Nazi movements, including Atomwaffen, also the early version of Azov that ultimately broke off and changed what they were. It got started. The Ukrainian Nazis got started by a Russian on the Iron March server in the early 2010s.
Right now,
there's a reason why these things always seem to converge. These extremists, Christians, the Russians, and the Nazis. It's not just because they're the worst people. It's because they are very much
I just
similar movie.
retweeted an old thread where I called it "All the President's Men," not a witch hunt, because I started showing, this was written, I think, in 2019, all the convictions, like that. This was before the pardon fraud, it was showing the convictions and what crimes they'd committed. And so many people in Trump's orbit were already going to prison or convicted for child trafficking offenses. So when Keir said that, I was like, oh, yeah, as well as when you research some of the history of some of the oligarchs. So it's all one, one horrible, depraved misfit soup. And I think,
Well,
again,
like look at a guy like George Nader,
well,
right?
yeah, yeah,
George Nader was in the middle of fucking everything. It was blatant about it, right? He was just
yeah,
running around doing, huge $1 million deals for the Russians and the Saudis, with Eric Prince and Steve Bannon and all these guys, and he was shameless about it, because he was compromised out his ass, because he did whatever they wanted him to, because he knew that at any minute he could go down. And guess what happened? By the way, they caught him at an airport, with
yeah. I
seatbelt on
mean,
his phone.
and he should have never not been behind bars, because what he did to young children in Czechoslovakia. So this is a guy
He,
who's been bad for a very long time, and it finally caught up with
and
him.
but why is he in a room with Eric Prince and like
Yeah,
MBZ and
well,
fucking Don Jr. and Bannon, right? And
or why is he?
Hey,
in
hey,
the safe
you
house
keep
with
you
the
keep
Russian guy.
you keep saying Eric Prince, and I got to bring this up.
Yeah, everybody, please watch Jack, Brian, and Marley's and Emily's, or listen to their podcast, American PSYOP,
Yeah, bud.
because it's really, really important. Um,
It is important, and I got a little shout out at the end, and
yeah, you got a
I
big
was
shout out at the end
I was
for
Hey,
surprised.
can we talk
for for,
about
for
the
your work
freaking?
on Flynn, for your
Can we
work
talk about
exposing
the
him.
ascended numbskulls for a minute?
What?
The ascended numbskulls.
Is that a new punk band?
The I am woo woo craziness.
No.
What about
Those
the I am
people.
woo craziness?
Just the whole history of that, how it like literally sprung
No.
out of the silver shirts and Nazi
So that's a
occultism.
specific thing that's really was interesting, which is, so if you've heard the podcast Ultra, um, uh,
Yeah.
William Dudley Pelley had a Nazi group called the Silver Shirts, that were literally American Nazis, and they got indicted for seditious conspiracy. And it turns out that the I am activity, which came right out of Theosophy in the 30s, 20s and 30s. Shit. Sorry, I got distracted. What was I saying?
You were talking
I
about
am
the 30s.
theosophy.
Yeah, so
Theosophical stuff comes
sorry,
from.
right. I am Flynn's group, which he did the video that I did, the back and forth between him
Yeah.
and Elizabeth
Claire Prophet.
Church Universal
That was an
Triumphant.
I
Yeah.
am cult
Yes.
called
Right.
the Church Universal and Triumphant.
Yeah.
It came directly out of the I am activity. And the I am activity was literally half of the Silver Shirts, who broke off of the Silver Shirts, the Nazi sympathizers, and formed the I am activity. It was sort of it was almost like like we have the pastel anon these here. It was the sort of woo-woo version of the Nazis,
Woo.
right? Straight up, it was, it was in all the Seven Rays shit and all the, the White Brotherhood and all this crazy shit. It was literally started by Nazis.
And we still have, and one of the things about American PSYOP, which is very important, is that there are still all of these threads that are occurring today that are out, targeting people from the same groups. But what I would like to talk about is some of the events of the week that we have not already touched upon. I guess Sunday started off with, what appeared to be a copycat coup in Brazil. Yeah, so that happened.
Attempted coup.
And then what day are we on? Thursday. There's been a breaker related to documents, another special counsel, and all I want to say about that is I sent you, please high five. I sent you an image from an artist named Isaac Cordal, and I don't know if you have that or not, but I texted it to you. It's called "Follow the Leaders." On a whim, I went to track down this artist that my son turned me on to, Isaac Cordal. You'll recognize the image when you see it. It's little bald men, clearly in the financial sector, kind of going underwater, sort of a metaphor for our times. If you can find it, great. If not, but when I followed him to
I found it. Let's see if I can share it.
I followed him to an art exhibit in Montreal. And then I met him because I'm such a fan of his work. He's such a genius. He's a Spanish artist who stages these little gnarly men holding briefcases and whatnot all throughout the world. He puts them in all different places. In this case, he put them in a puddle. But when I interviewed him, the way he ended the interview was like, there's just two types of people, good and bad. I think we overcomplicate things. And if people are going to put Joe Biden on the same level as Donald Trump, then I'm sorry, but you're a moron. That's it. Two types of people, good and bad. Trump is a long-time bad guy. Joe Biden is a long-time good guy. It's that simple. That's all I got to say about that.
I think I actually got.
I mean, I don't know.
People, Keir,
I don't know if you're gonna have anybody arguing with you, but
Keir was saying that we overcomplicate things all the time, and part of the fog of unknowability, part of theater craft, part of the flooding the zone of shit is we're all like, oh, well, then what really happened? Well, then they said this, and then this reporter said this, and then this happened, and then they had to put a special counsel on it. It's like, dude, if you can't tell who in Congress is bad, who tried to overthrow our country and is still trying to, versus people who are like public servants who are trying to keep democracy together, then I'm sorry, I can't help you. We don't have to overcomplicate these things, good and bad.
The debt ceiling is the big scare, right? The government shutdown that will occur. And they're going to hold that hostage for cutting Social Security and Medicare. Wow. And they supported a coup against our country, and yet nothing has been done against them. And I would just like to know what the fuck is going on in my country.
Well, I'd like to know that too.
It's cliche at this point. If you don't punish an insurrection, it's practice, and it's still going on, right? Mm-hmm. So I wrote a piece called the Second Insurrection, which was about that shit show last week in Congress, pretending to be some kind of official proceeding where a bunch of fucking morons, including, as we were just talking about, a accused pedophile sex trafficker, ran around the fucking Congress just doing propaganda, nominating each other. Oh, let's get that Nazi nominated. Let's put this fucking Russian propaganda up on the board. Let's fuck with Kevin McCarthy for 5 fucking days and put the entire country through some kind of, pathetic performance art. I mean, the thing is about the first insurrection, everybody, even the Republicans could see that was a crime, right? You could look on the screen, you could see, oh, these are MAGA people who are committing crimes by doing bad things in the Capitol. But then 2 fucking years later, you allow them back in the building to do it from the inside with television cameras. What the fucking fuck?
Even worse.
We need rules about. Yes. I'm not going to calm down. We need.
But I'm not telling you to.
We need rules for these fuckers who tried to overthrow democracy.
Yes,
They should
yes,
not be allowed back in the goddamn
yes,
country,
yes,
much
yes,
less the capital.
yes,
Thank you for going to my
yes,
third time.
All
yes.
right.
I wasn't telling you to
Hallelujah,
calm
brother.
down.
Praise
I wasn't
the
telling
Lord.
you to
All right,
calm
all right.
down.
Sorry, I
My
thought
turn.
you were.
No,
My
I was gonna buttress your point.
I need to say that out of that entire Kevin McCarthy vote fucking thing, the most gangster moment in that entire thing was when dude leaned over on Matt Gaetz, whispered in his ear, and you could see Matt Gaetz turn pale under his fucking makeup. And he just said, okay.
All right, whatever.
And he voted present, but then the next one he voted for
Whatever.
McCarthy.
So,
Dude,
But that
what
was
are you
the
talking
most
about?
gangster.
Sorry, I
Dude,
covered this
there was
whole
a
thing.
moment
I covered
when
this
Matt-
whole thing in detail. Round 14 was the biggest fuck you I've ever seen in Congress, where all accused pedophile sex trafficker Matt Gaetz had to do was vote for McCarthy.
Rapey
And
McForehead.
he put everybody through another 2 hours of this asinine spectacle because he wanted to extract an armed services subcommittee, which apparently he got. So, come on,
it's
man.
sad. These are
Why
this
the
is
fuck is like
terrible.
Chuck Johnson's BFF running the goddamn legislature? What's happening?
Well, unfortunately, this is not
The
a
fascists
simulation.
are taking over.
I was gonna say,
I forgot.
What?
I forgot. That's what the whole.
What?
That's what an insurrection is.
it's
Sorry, I
it's
forgot
not
briefly.
not a simulation. I think that
No,
I think
no,
that
it's not.
there are things that there are things that are designed for outrage, and designed to provoke us all into just wanting to scream at how unjust things are. But then there are things that are literally like, um, you know, just continuing to like tube feed poison to a level where it becomes like, even shocking to those where nothing's shocking anymore. And when Lauren Boebert, and you wrote about this, Jim, as did I, when she was platformed on MSNBC as if she weren't a chaos agent, as if she were just a politician who didn't give Nancy Pelosi's location and tweet 1776 and all of that, as if she didn't pose with her young children with, big automatic rifles, all that stuff, as if.
As if her husband didn't whip his wiener out in
Hey,
front of a bunch of
okay.
No. Why does this matter? Because what did Keir say about sex offenders?
We will never get
Am
through
I fucking wrong?
We will never get through an episode ever without high-five having to put something in there. Let's just cut it in post. Let's just bleep
cut
it
it in
and
post,
cut it in
fine.
post.
We got to stop making that joke. We make that joke.
No,
every
we will never.
It's
Some
how-
jokes get
It's how I feel better.
funnier the longer you beat them.
It's how I feel
You
better.
beat the shit out of that joke. But look, you said Lauren Boebert on MSNBC.
You're surrendering. You're putting up the white surrender flag and saying, "We just want the money. Just give us the cash." There's no good's going to come of that.
Hold on, I'm trying to hold in my dark humor.
No good is going to come in platforming a chaos agent on MSNBC so you can legitimize her.
There's something called the Overton window. It's a very important concept. It's very simple. What in the general concept of the public is it acceptable to talk about as if it's, normal, right? And there's a far left and there's a far right. And when you platform Lauren fucking Boebert, you shift the Overton window all the way to dipshit QAnon Nazi. That is now the acceptable range of discourse because you treated her like a politician instead of a crazy ass, like brainwashed chaos agent that was trained by Eric Prince on his fucking ranch somewhere. It's pathetic.
It's bad. It's bad.
In a karmic universal retribution moment, Laura Boebert's former restaurant has been replaced by a taqueria.
Okay, so I do want to say that. All right, hi-fi. I do want to say that.
Just saying.
It's
Just
as someone without a television and cable TV, and I still got to endure these clips because you can't get away from them. Seeing the newly groomed, hair smoothed out, professional makeup jobbed version of Marjorie Taylor Greene, the woman who stalked a victim of the Parkland violence, to see her on TV just saying, "Oh, I was just in QAnon for a little while. I just got sucked in," but having her be very well groomed and very well presented. I mean, obviously, if I just again in my head hear the words come out in Russian, obviously we are being forced to have memory repression, which is part of what happens in the early stages of autocracy. Obviously this is all theater craft, and it's designed to have an impact where we forget and we say, okay, it's like Mike Flynn going on Twitter Spaces to be some normal guy. None of this is normal, and I'm not going to forget.
Right. Or you have, Elmo bringing Tracy Diaz and I mean, for God's sake, into the official Twitter files, like the normalization, the Overton windowing of our society is just bananas off the charts, right?
Yeah.
Elmo is now made not like actual Nazis, not QAnon Nazis like
right.
Lord Boebert, but actual fucking
yeah.
Nazis like Andrew Anglin. Now that is the Overton window.
Right. I do.
You said Tracy Diaz. I just wanted to remind everyone that Tracy Diaz did in fact receive amplification from Russian accounts.
But it was again, that article not helpful because she wasn't
it's
amplified.
Reuters.
She wasn't amplified by the 40 odd accounts, right? This is signaling. It's what is the propaganda going to be today? Like the 10 GOP account that everybody always talks about.
Yeah.
Like the actual number of impressions that particular account got doesn't fucking matter. It's what is it pushing that then spreads out to others? Because people knew, right? Like it wasn't about the rubes who were looking at 10 GOP thinking it was Americans. It was about the people who knew it was the Russians who were spreading it to Americans.
Yes. What about them? None of them are in prison. That's the problem. Don Jr. was retweeting that. Yeah. So the other day I read you.
Hold on, Heidi. I need to tell our viewers two things.
Yeah.
One, everything on the internet is a lie, and propaganda, just like heroin, only takes one link. And you're fucking hooked. Just remember that, kids. Be safe out there. The internet is trying to kill you.
But not everything on the internet's a lie. That's the problem. The internet is also an incredible tool for people to connect and spread the truth. It's just
but if you start from the baseline of everything's a lie, then you can figure out what's true or not.
That was just a message from Scary Dad.
That was
a Scary Dad message.
Eat your goddamn broccoli.
I would prefer to go to what my message was going to be. Jim, I shared this with you when I did that interview with you, but I do think it's really important to look at a message from John Paul Stevens, the Justice John Paul Stevens from the grave. Citizens United needs to be overturned, and he gave a blistering dissent because he knew it was going to be something that was incredibly harmful and insidious to our democracy. And he wrote about, corporations having personhood. Such an assumption would have accorded the propaganda broadcast to our troops by Tokyo Rose during World War II, the same protectionist speech by Allied commanders. That's where we're at. That's what's up. That's where it is, right there. That's what's going on.
Well,
what are we going to do about it?
The excuse is that was war. That was wartime, right? And that we're not in war. which goes back to the goddamn point that we need to fucking tell everyone we're in one.
We are
Yeah.
in war.
Because as soon as people realize we're in an actual war, then suddenly Tokyo Rose is not okay anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no one gives a shit when you're not at war with Japan. If there's some weird lady out there like, going like this, and
it's not Tokyo Rose. It's
what?
Moscow Misha.
Yes, Moscow
It's
Misha.
the same thing. That's the point.
Yeah.
The point is, don't confuse me. I'm already old and high.
My bad, man. Sorry.
You're right, Jim. You're right. Damn it, Jim.
Tokyo,
you're right.
but it's true. No one would give a shit about weird ass Tokyo Rose if we weren't at war. And that's the advantage they're taking, is that we're not willing to step up and say, look, see all these fucking people out here, they're Russian influencers that are here to brainwash you into doing shit that's going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, we got to start being honest with people about what's happening to them, because not to tell them is to lie to them.
Yeah.
It's like Vladimir, mentioned Plato's quote, right?
Yeah.
Like, if somebody lies to you, they are creating a separate reality and forcing you to live in it.
Yeah, Volodymyr Dymchenko, Ukraine soldier.
And we need to start recognizing and acknowledging the pain and that people are going through. How many of us have these relatives who are just these crazy ass weird fascist zombies, and we don't know what to do about it? Well, if we just had somebody tell us that, no, that's actually not normal at all, that person is the victim of psyops, it might take people a minute to kind of get their head around it, but then they would do something about it.
Yes, they would. And they would also want their lives and their families back, because at the end of the day, this has been disrupting and harming, real families. I think with the time we have left, the perfect way to use that time is to let Keir Giles take us out. Take us out.
Hold on, we got 15 seconds.
Yeah.
That clip's only like a minute 40 something.
It's a minute 24.
A minute 24. Yeah, it's short.
So for 15 seconds, let's see. I just want to say thanks to everybody who supports us and supports our work. And because I think I've been through so much trauma, all those kind words from people, from real people, that means so much to me. So I just want to say thank you. Happy New Year, and let's fight the good fight, and let's still look after each other.
Wait, what time is it? Are we done?
Almost.
Yeah.
We're gonna be done in a second. I think we might go over just a little bit.
Sorry, forgive me.
We're gonna play the clip.
For the boomer.
Well, Jim, get your last word in. Get your last word in.
Get your last word in, Jim.
Drop it. Drop your last bit of knowledge for us.
Drop it like it's hot, Jim.
I'm out of TED Talks.
Jim is back on Twitter. You can find him at Jim Stewartson. Where
Yes,
a quarter million people saw his most recent Flynn thread. Yo.
350.
350. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Nobody take what I say in the comments seriously, please.
Oh no,
yeah,
Wi-Fi. Oh, don't let him. Don't let him. Bad dad. Bad dad.
Bad dad.
Bad dad. Like bad Santa. It's bad dad.
What's the point in building a crew if you can't use them to troll your enemies? I mean, come on. Damn.
Word.
Of course. Yeah.
Word.
Think about how Russia built their troll.
Punch up.
Yeah.
Not down. Not down to the
punch up.
I'm punching everybody. Everybody on
Punch
that
up.
side.
Punch
Remember
up.
what Paul Nyland said?
If
Russia's on your side, you're on the wrong goddamn side.
Word.
Punch up.
Here's
Keir.
The pattern, unfortunately, that seems to underlie a lot of the most enthusiastic Russian propagandists is that they have been dealing with severely damaged personalities and personal failure for most of their lives. In fact, the overlap between the number of Russian propagandists who also turn out to be convicted sex offenders is absolutely startling. There are some deep-seated fundamental personality flaws that actually predispose people to being available to be made use of by Russia. And if you look back at the KGB handbooks for recruiting agents of influence, agents of subversion, or indeed propagandists, then you can see very clearly that Russia understood the misfits make the good targets, the people with a grudge, the people who feel they've been treated unfairly by the world because they've been consistent failures, and therefore seek revenge. And you can see that revenge coming through so strongly in some of the verbal attacks that you hear from the trolls, from the so-called independent journalists, the ones pushing the Russian propaganda lines, because the bile and the vitriol and the hatred that they pour out when they're talking about people who criticize Russia, it's extremely personal, and it's plainly tapping deeply into their own personality defects.